Welcome back to the This Week in Fantasy series, a series in which I take a look at my fantasy football league through the creative lens of the teams themselves, as opposed to a normal fantasy football style show where people email in and ask, should I start this guy or this guy? They're both terrible. Joining me once again is my cousin and 2v2 partner Spencer, who made a plethora of accurate predictions last week, earning himself a reappearance. Spencer, how's it going?
Good. Everyone's tired of hearing my voice, but they're going to have to hear it one more week.
Everybody loves your voice, Spencer, especially compared to just me. The solo episodes, I think, are actually the worst, so everyone likes you, Spence. And I don't think you've reeled off enough wins in a row to become insufferable yet, so catching you early, before you get Super Bowl bound.
Yeah, before I rip off 10 losses in a row and miss the playoffs.
I don't think that's going to happen this year, fella, so we can go ahead and talk about last week's games before getting into these, as we usually do.
Just a couple of outliers.
A couple of outliers in this episode. So, me and AB, this was a one-sided shitholing, as you might expect. This is something that I predicted myself to win big, and I did. And the things that I think are worth noting is even though my running backs came up soft and got both less than 7, my receivers popped off. Keenan Allen over 10, Scary Terry, big day, and Tyler Lockett continues to be an exceptional deep threat, one of the most lethal receivers in the league. Do you think that AB's team is going to be at the bottom whenever the season ends, Spencer?
Yeah, I mean, I think he needs to make a move, mix it up. When you open like this, you got to make something happen. Unfortunately, in our league, there's only a handful of people who typically trade, or like at least can do a mix-up trade, and a lot of the time they're like scared to do so. So yeah, but I would expect his to be at the bottom,
Yeah.
And the crazy part is like he was like riding high on his 2 top 5 tight ends. I don't even think they're in the top 10 right now.
Yeah, we can check on that one in a second. I think that AB's really struggling, desperately needs a win in week 3. Weston took down Clap 4 in a pretty one-sided affair. Weston 2-0, Clap 4 0-2. As a lot of people expected, Weston is pretty damn lethal and consistent. His receivers look decent. Diggs, of course, took part in that glorious shutout over Miami, where Tua went down. I think the Dolphins are really going to struggle in the upcoming weeks. Jacoby Brissett, despite being serviceable in the past, I think when you drop him into that offense, there's not a lot going to happen positive. So, do you want to say anything about that?
I don't think that they're that much worse off with Brissett. I think he's a peg down from Tua, but like a 6 instead of a 7. I mean, we've seen him go and like be pretty serviceable backup in places like Indy historically. And it's not like they were blowing the doors off with Tua anyway. I don't know.
I agree with you. I don't think he is that much worse than Tua, but a 7 instead of a 6, I'm thinking a 3 instead of a 4. Like, I think Tua's a bit below average, and I think Brissett's a little bit worse than Tua. But what I really meant was he doesn't really have that many weapons. The Miami defense is nothing to write home about. And I'm just of the opinion that you should be fading the Dolphins in the upcoming weeks.
Yeah, I mean, they're getting Will Fuller back. They've got Devontae Parker, who's been good. They've got that tight end who's shown some big playability.
Giske?
They've got just Gesicki or something.
Yeah, just.
They have Miles Gaskins, the running back. They've got, I think, Sonny Michel maybe, or maybe he's with another team.
Michel's on the Rams.
They have some other running back who might have been on the Rams at one point and been okay and has been, I don't know. Like, they're not names that, Will Fuller's sort of a big name, but the rest of them aren't. They're not names that blow your doors off, but, they're names that we've seen be productive in the past. So I don't think they're completely as weapon deprived as you're making them out to be. I mean, I don't think they're gonna win 12 games, but I think that they can be competitive, and I think their weapons under Brissett can perform.
Definitely. And we can look at the tight ends here and see just how far AB's guys have fallen. I mean, you can keep scrolling and scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, and it's a whole lot of nothing. There's your basketball boy, Seals Jones, even over Mark Andrews. So, yeah, it's brutal for AB. I think
if there's people I've played basketball and football against ahead of AB's tight ends, it's a bad year.
Yeah, AB, I think, of course, did that trade despite Ben, as I predicted, and he admitted, and I think it's blowing up in his face a little bit. I think his team would be way better off with Julio and just rolling with one guy.
He really helped Mark out a lot. Like that trade, like the trade with Ben, obviously was sort of a ripoff, but like honestly, AB sort of ripped himself off with that trade.
Yeah, mostly because of position depth as opposed to like the power of each player, I think.
I mean, like, they're in the same ballpark, but even then, like, I mean, even when you asked me, I think, on the trade before, I sort of said, like, I mean, like, it's in the ballpark, but, like, I sort of felt like he reached on, like, Kittle, I don't know. I didn't think it made sense. I was sort of down on Kittle this year. I think we've sort of seen my concerns. I don't know if I voiced them on TWIF, but I know I voiced them to you, is that when San Fran gets the lead, they just don't pass it. So like you're gonna see games where he's just not involved, and they've shown a more willingness than they have historically this year to throw it to receivers. So like, I don't know. I think he'll be like a top 10 guy for sure before it's all said and done. Top 5 guy maybe, but like. I just prefer these tight ends that are game script proof, that they're gonna get looks whether the team is ahead or behind, Like I hate, especially like you're drafting him as with your third round pick, man. Like when you're using a third round pick on a guy, like if he's getting 4 targets, even at tight end, like that's rough,
Yeah. Weston looking scary as usual, but I think the commish is the bigger story. These running backs are just going to drag his team down so insanely hard this year. I think that he's going to really struggle to put up consistent point production with Fournette and Taylor. Do you agree or disagree?
I actually, I mean, I don't hate Taylor. I don't think he's a bad running back. Fournette's sort of been the guy. Like Ronald Jones is a non-factor. It's like he's not trusted in their offense or something. So I'm not as low. I mean, I don't love them, but like I think they're not like bottom of the barrel guys. I think the bigger story here is just like, I think is the real problem is like he doesn't. When you look at his team, it's just like, okay, yeah, he's got Mahomes. That's sort of nice, but then like he sort of has Evans, who's like gonna be very boom or bust. He boomed last week. He'll probably boom this week because AB has COVID, but like. When all their weapons are intact, it's sort of what we said, too many mouths in that Tampa Bay offense for you to like want to mess with it. And even Cooper, like, I don't know, Cooper, I feel like Cooper's super boomer bust too. I feel like his team sort of lacks consistency a little bit.
Definitely.
And like you sort of, it's not that any of his positions are bad, though obviously getting 0 out of your tight end is like not good. Though I think he has Kyle Pitts, which for some odd reason he's like not starting over Eric Ebron, which is like really odd to me. But I think
you said
that
Ebron was terrible last week, and you were dead on about that. The guy's a fraud.
It just didn't like. I mean, speaking of, I guess I completely forgot, but I think I said you should start Pitts last week. Obviously, was right. Pitts, did pretty good. I mean, well, obviously anything's better than 0, but. Yeah, so anyway, long story short, I don't think his team is as bad as you say. I think he'll probably get a couple wins, but it's just not consistent. He's a good candidate to shake things up, I think. Sort of similar to AB, where you can sort of see, like, if he could like after this week, if he could trade Evans for a more consistent guy and maybe a mid-tier running back, like, I don't know, maybe that could help. I mean, you don't have anything to lose when you're 0-2, so you might as well swing for the fences,
Right. Jaxon played a low-scoring game versus Lilly, in which the kicker scoring 21 was a major factor. I mean, anytime two teams end with point totals in the 70s, if one person got 21 from their kicker, that's going to be a huge swing. Jackson's kicker got shut out. I mean, that's a 21-point kicker difference. Fucking insanity.
Yeah, it's nuts. She got 20 from the Cleveland dual backfield. I mean, she got it done. What else is there to say? It wasn't pretty, but
Then we had you decimating Cameron. What were your thoughts on this?
I was a little worried. The Dak Prescott was in like a really I mean, he was in a game where he could have gone for 40. That game was so ugly, though. I was very surprised with how low scoring and ugly that game was. I mean, I think it had a 58-point total or 57-point total. Like,
Yeah, just
it was bananas.
you had dropsies, you had stupid taunting penalties, unforced pre-snap errors, personal foul calls. That game was a fucking disaster. And it could have been way worse for the Cowboys. They were lucky to squeak out a fucking win, dude. They were real lucky.
Oh yeah, I agree with that. So I guess glad my guys were able to perform. My running backs let me down, but thankfully, like the first week, it was my wide receivers that let me down. This week, they sort of played well, but my running back and tight end let me down. But that's the thing about having consistency is even though they let me down, I got points from every position. You know, no one dropped zeros or insanely low totals. I mean, except the Kamara, I guess. So that's sort of like the beauty behind building your team this way. So now, and I still scored 100. So if I can get my running backs and wide receivers and tight end on the same page the same week, I think I can, I think I'm capable of beating anyone, on a week-to-week basis. So that's good.
Agreed. Cameron putting up low totals before the bye weeks hit. Sort of interesting. And then we have the best game of the week. Seagouch and Mark, who just played a real barn burner. Kyler Murray just popping off as usual. This guy has such a high ceiling, a high floor. This guy, I mean, he's really going to get you 20 plus every week, it feels like, and can have these insane hard carry games. What jumped out at you about this insane matchup?
I mean, we were right. I think we said to start Rodgers over Cousins for a bounce back. We were sort of right on that, but Cousins was more serviceable than I think I expected him to be. So I guess that was I'm not gonna say a good move, but I guess it wasn't as bad as we thought. Yeah, I mean, they both have solid teams, solid scary teams. What's scary, I think, about Mark's team is just he is good from top to bottom. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The weakness of his team is I don't think he has a ton of options at running back. So if he has an injury, or bye weeks, I don't really believe in his backups all that much. Yeah, Zach Moss got 13, but look, he got 9 touches.
Yeah. Exactly.
So when bye weeks come, you definitely can lose a couple there, just because not being deep enough. But yeah, I mean, it was not horrible, and yeah, Seagouch's team looks scary, So you scroll back up, yeah, Tanyan that performed. Yeah, looks like he could be a threat,
Well, Seagouch was down big, and then that Derrick Henry game happened against Seattle, where Henry just kept getting the ball and putting up more and more points. So even though Derrick Henry looked ineffective in week 1, he really showed everyone that he still has the ability to put up these ridiculous performances. I think him and Tyreek Hill are the two players that can really fuck you up if they're the last person left and you're ahead and the other guy has them.
I sort of wonder though, teams are gonna seem this film. At some point they're just gonna say we're not gonna let Henry beat us. I guess it's not like he hasn't been doing it for a couple of years now.
Yeah,
or
they
last 2 years.
They have the VODs from last 2 years, and now they have Julio. I think if it was as easy as stacking the box, he'd look like Zeke Elliott more. But
I just
Real
think that
scary.
there'll be games where teams are just like, we'll let Tannehill beat us with his arm, but we're not going to let Henry beat us, because it seems like that's the better way. Like, I don't know. I guess that was a 3-point game, so like Seattle was in it, but I'm just like, I just can't imagine teams letting him get 200 all-purpose yards every game. Like, that's insane. That was the biggest story, honestly, was sort of my big issue with Henry was he's a one-dimensional player. He doesn't really get passing yards,
Right.
but you saw him get the passing work too. I mean, like, that's insane. If he starts getting passing work week to week, I mean, this is a guy who can be like, I mean, he averaged like 1.2 targets a game last year, and he got 5 or 6, I think, last week. So like, this is yeah. I mean, that's fucking nuts. 41 touches.
Yeah.
41 touches. Like, that's crazy. Sorry if we want to harp on that.
No, I mean, you got to mention that more than once. Like 41 touches, you can't go wrong with that. No matter how bad
Like,
you are, you're
even
going to put up
quarterbacks don't touch the ball 41 times in some of these low volume teams. You know,
True.
like, oh, that's crazy.
Big win for the Gouch. He really needed that one. Didn't want to start out 0-2, and it looked like he was dead for a few hours there. Then we see this game between Ben and Aaron, where Ben just came up short. Lamar Jackson had like negative points at halftime. He was looking terrible, and Ben just really got the bad end of Tyreek Hill. When he played me, he got the good end. When he played Rampy, he got the crap box end. And this is what's brutal about Hill, is he's one of the most explosive players in the league, but he'll take a big steamy right on your chest and solo lose you games sometimes.
Yeah, Baltimore's game plan was basically making sure Hill didn't beat them. So they were like hyper focused on shutting him down because he had previously had a huge game. And this is sort of the conundrum when you have, even when you have Kelsey, though I think Kelsey is hard to stop. Teams, I noticed it last year. And it's funny if you're playing DFS like I am, the teams tend to employ similar strategies when they play like the same team, right? So like when Baltimore plays Kansas City next time, they'll probably do the same. I mean, they won the game, you know, so they'll probably employ the same strategy on Hill. So it's sort of good. Like, it really isn't super relevant. I mean, it's not like you can bench Hill even in a matchup you know he'll get focused on. But for like daily fantasy purposes, it's good to know the teams and how they like to defend specific players. And that also means that Kelsey, when the teams focus Hill, it means that Kelsey becomes a better play. So not really super actionable information for fantasy, because obviously those guys are sort of must starts. But it is, I guess, worth noting. From an analytical standpoint.
Certainly. Anything about Rampy's team that jumps out to you? To me, it's the Landry injury.
Yeah, I mean that's unfortunate. Makes Odell Beckham a little better of a play, I guess, if you ever consider him a good play. I mean, he should have started Herbert, like we said. The Winston start was too early. Yeah, I mean, he sort of has an uninspiring team. He has like gaping weaknesses at tight end and running back. Yeah, I mean, it's a flawed team.
Aaron Jones
Actually,
had this insane Rambo comeback on Monday Night Football where it looked like Ben was going to win for sure, and then Rampy came back super hard.
I just think like in that offense, Aaron Jones is gonna like, yeah, like obviously he can have weeks like this, but like a lot of that was receiving work.
Yeah.
So like teams are gonna see the film and they're gonna adjust. And I feel like Adams hasn't had a normal Adams season, so I'm sort of buying the Jones regression. Obviously, that's not a crazy take. He has 35, but just I think he'll be more average the rest of the stretch, and I think we'll see Adams do more. I actually think that like Ben's team is probably stronger than Aaron's, so it's sort of real lucky for Aaron to get this win.
Agreed. Okay, we can move on to the next week's matchups, the previews. Let's start with Benny Boy and A. Bizzle. Both guys could really use the win. And Lamar Jackson's facing off against Detroit. You got to pencil him in for a big day, right, Spence?
Yeah, Lamar Jackson this year is sort of what Jaxon, when he drafted him first overall last year, expected him to be. I think, like we're seeing the monster rushing totals that you sort of needed him to put up. So I think that was a real sharp pick by Ben. I sort of was on the fence on how good he would be, but yeah, against Detroit, I mean, he should go crazy. In fact, the real downside is, especially after last week, he got a little banged up with his flippy into the end zone against the Chiefs
Yeah.
and their win. And I'm a little like, you sort of need him to have rushing upside. So I still think he'll be good against Detroit, but sort of the risk is they might not run him. They might just give it a bunch to the backs to keep him safe because they might not need to run him. You know what I mean? So yeah, but obviously good spot. He should do great.
He's also dealing with an illness, so maybe you wouldn't be as high on Jackson as you would be normally when a matchup against Detroit.
Yep.
Teddy Bridgewater looked a lot better than a lot of people thought he would last week. He's facing the soft as fuck Jets. Again, you've got to pencil this guy in for like 17 plus, I think. I think he's going to have another good day.
Yeah, he's been a real good game manager for them. I don't think he's had a turnover yet this season.
Very steady.
And they don't have a bad defense. I mean, Denver could sneak their way into the playoffs. Like, I don't think that's a crazy take. He should be good. I mean, obviously, I'm higher. I think Jackson's in a better spot, better player. But yeah, I mean, he'll be serviceable.
What do you think about the running backs here?
Mixon at Pittsburgh. That's sort of an ugly matchup. I think that's going to be tough for him to break 10. I mean, he can get there. He's getting a ton of volume. Last week he didn't get much work in the receiving game, which is a little scary because you sort of need him to be where he was drafted to pay that off. You need him to be 5 touches in the receiving game a week or something like that. And Swift has been sort of in a little bit more of a timeshare than I was expecting it to be too, with that Jamal Williams guy.
Yeah.
But I mean, he's good and he's better in PPR. But I think even in standard, he just doesn't have that insane upside. You know what I mean? But both those guys are consistent and should get around like 8 to 10 probably, with higher upside potential. And on the flip side, you've got Singletary, garbage. I think he's in a timeshare, and I think he's in the butt of the timeshare.
And is Zach Moss. He's more of like the third down, like flats pass guy.
He actually got more volume than Moss, so maybe he's not as bad of a start as I thought. But still, it's a timeshare, and Buffalo doesn't really run it historically. They have some of the least running back rushes in the league normally. But Eckler's in a dynamite matchup against Kansas City, and he showed last week that he still has receiving upside, which is sort of scary after not having any receiving work week 1. So in a game that I expect the Chargers to be trailing, I expect he could get 10 receptions and probably punch it in at least once. So I gotta sort of lean Austin here because I think Eckler can solo carry his backs over Ben's here. I think matchups for matchup reasons and I just think game script. Eckler I think will get 20. Like, that might be a hot take, but it's a great game script matchup.
I feel like the ceiling for Mixon and Swift is not high at all. I feel like the idea that Mixon and Swift combined for over 25 is ridiculous. So I agree, like Eckler could potentially have as many points as Mixon and Swift combined, especially with Swift coming off of a bit of an injury playing against Baltimore. I feel like Swift could really have a poor performance this week.
Yeah, I mean, Mixon in a normal week, I don't mind. He's getting a ton of work. He's not very efficient with it, but he's getting a ton of work. But yeah, at Pittsburgh, you just have a hard time thinking that he's going to be too efficient in that matchup. So,
what do you think about this start of Quintez Cephus?
This is a surprisingly sharp pickup by AB.
Can you explain to the audience why?
Yeah, so I think the Tyrell Williams was the starter. Initially, and he got hurt, and they don't really have a wide receiver. A lot of their receiving work goes through Hawkinson and the running backs, but they still, like, obviously he'll still be out there a lot of snaps. He'll still get a lot of work, and he's sort of demonstrated he's sort of the wide receiver one in terms of workload. Now that the other guy got hurt, so he's not like my favorite start, but like I think he's worth being on your bench at least, and he's pretty thin. I don't hate it. I probably would start Claypool over him, but
Fair enough.
it's not a horrible start. The pickup was smart. I don't know about the start, but
You think
it's
that?
a good.
What are your thoughts on Adams going into San Francisco?
I think they might struggle a little bit, but I think he'll bounce back and get a tutty. So I think he probably outscores Hill if we're sort of thinking of it as a matchup. I think that the Chargers just watched the film of what the Ravens did. I think they'll employ a similar strategy.
Okay, that's interesting.
So I think Hill like is not going to have the upside that Adams is going to have. And then Jones is like, to my surprise, been the RB1 for Jacksonville, getting a ton of work, a lot of targets. So I expect that he'll probably be pretty solid for Ben.
Yeah, I think that this is a nice little receiver matchup. I do think that Hill will be a little bit diminished, like you said. But what really jumps out to me is this tight end matchup with Noah Fant getting to face the Jets. I think he's going to get 8+, and Kittle could potentially struggle again.
I think that this might be a game script where San Fran has to actually pass to keep up. So I actually think Kittle wins this.
Okay.
I think he has his best week of the season.
What about this flex matchup? Mike Davis and another receiver who not many people have heard of, Tim Patrick. AB going with some lesser-known guys here at the bottom part of his receiver lineup.
I mean, he's just some low-volume, random wide receiver. I wouldn't be starting him. I probably wouldn't be rostering him, to be honest.
It kind of surprised me he has both of these guys in over Claypool, this guy and the Detroit guy.
Yeah, I mean, Claypool's a big threat guy, but he's demonstrated the last 2 weeks that he hasn't been super efficient, but he's still been getting like a good floor production. Like, this is a guy who has 3 touchdown upside.
Yeah.
And like we see him getting the work. Like, he's not like getting, Adams work or Waller work, but like he's getting wide receiver 2 work, so it is odd that he's sitting him. I think it's a case of like AB is maybe not the most like analytical owner, and he might be box score watching too much. Or like some guys, like they don't think about like what drives production. They just look at how many points they produced. So when you like look at Patrick, you see that he got 4 targets, right? And he just punched it in on low yardage twice basically this season.
Yeah.
So like you probably should never be starting a wide receiver that gets 4 targets, just in general. So yeah, basically, long story short, I think Ben, even though he doesn't none of his guys I think are in amazing spots, I think that they're all sort of above average compared to, actually, Jones is going to be in a great spot because basically every single week seems like Arizona's boat racing. So Jacksonville's going to have to pass to keep up, and Marvin Jones has been getting like a lot of work. But I just think Ben is getting more consistent points from the top to bottom of his lineup, and AB has some questionable guys. He's a good guy who could benefit a lot from trading talent for depth, or just starting the depth that he has.
More tight end depth, perhaps. Maybe that's the answer.
Yeah.
Also, AB, even if he's not box score watching, as you guessed. Maybe he's doing what Baldy warned against, and he's tilting. You think AB's tilting? It sure looks... Oh my god. It sure looks like Baldy think that's what's going on. AB, stop tilting, AB. Look what Baldy says. Stop tilting.
Yeah, I mean...
I agree with you, though. I think Ben's going to take it. I think Ben's team is more dangerous than AB's, and there's a very good chance that it's just going to blow up in AB's face, and these cutesy starts are both going to get less than 5, and he's going to put up like 70 again.
Yeah, I think Ben probably wins by 10 plus.
Yeah. I do think the Cardinals defense will have a good day versus Jacksonville, and Trevor Lawrence is getting a nice little taste of what the Korean ladder in StarCraft tastes like after you've played on NA your whole life. He's like, holy shit, my win percentage is 30% less than it's always been. But for him, it's like literally 70 win percentage fucking percent, which is absolutely crazy.
I still believe in Lawrence. I think he'll figure it out. I just think some of those windows that used to be open, and just the speed is a little faster, you know. He'll get there.
I think he'll get there.
He'll learn.
He'll learn, just like you with the 9s. I think that Lawrence will also get there, but I think that the stat you hear repeated ad nauseum, like, he's lost 6 times. Even in tic-tac-toe, he's undefeated. Kickball god, like, he's literally never lost anything. And it's like, it's got to be pretty fucking brutal to be a Jacksonville Jaguar then, pretty boy. Because they are horrific. But we can move on. Definitely.
Yeah, it was funny. Like Kyler Murray, like going into college, like he had basically never lost a football game in his whole life. Like, can you imagine that?
No.
Like I'm saying, like, I think the 2 years he played, like, as a starter, I guess I should preface that. I'm sure he's been on maybe a team he didn't start, but basically his junior and senior year, I think he like won every game and the state championship, and like Pee Wee and all this other stuff. Like, supposedly the word was he'd never lost. So like, I was just trying to think, like, what does that feeling feel like? Like, imagine like playing sports like as a kid and your team. I was on some pretty good teams, and that thought is almost unfathomable to me. Like, what that must feel like. And then the feeling to lose for the first time, like, oh my gosh. But I know it's a little bit off topic, but like, no, I mean, I was thinking about that.
It's literally on topic. And I totally agree with you. It's like my feel when being on one winning baseball team my whole life. It's like, can you imagine what it would be like to never lose? It's like, I don't even know what it would be like to be on the best team once. And hilariously, you know, it's not just that you're losing for like the first couple times. It's like the other teams are way fucking better than you, and you're individually not performing that well either if you're Lawrence. So I also think like he's gonna get there. He'll learn. Like, he's not gonna keep shoving with 9s for 16 weeks in a row and become Ryan Leaf, right? So, but it's just sort of a brutal transition.
They'll win a couple games in the end, and like I think that they'll probably. Like, they probably need to beef up that O-line a bit. Like, it feels a little porous, shall we say.
Trade a few picks for Tunsil. That's the go-to Texan strat.
Yeah.
All right.
Basically look at everything the Texans did and just, like, don't do any of it in any similar fashion.
They're like, Trevor Lawrence, you're going to have to leave, man. He's like, what's wrong? I'm just getting a rub down. Sorry, Coach Coughlin's orders. You're not allowed to be at these establishments. Everyone in town knows. Here we have you facing off against Mark, a game that you desperately want to win as well as I want you to win very badly. Rodgers versus Brady, starting it off. And since this is your matchup, I want you to sort of take the reins on this and shadow box it a bit for me.
Yeah. Yeah, from the top. I think that LA Brady matchup is going to be dynamite. Probably the best game of the week.
Love it.
And I mean, you got to pencil in Brady for 25 plus. I mean, that's going to be a shootout. I don't know. I should have pulled up the Vegas lines, but I don't know what the total on that is. But like, I mean, it's got to be a 55 plus total, or like in that ballpark. So yeah, I mean that's going to be an electric game, and like, yeah, that should, both of those guys should like do well. And then Rodgers, I think that San Fran is going to take the air out of the ball a little bit, like they normally do. If they get the lead, if they're behind, which I think is likely, I think they'll pass it maybe more than they normally do. So, yeah, I mean, I think that the game script in this LA game is probably better for Brady. Like, I could be biased, but I think that game just could be insane. Like,
Yeah.
that might be like both of those teams could drop 30. Yeah, it's 55.5 total. I just brought it up while I was rambling. And then going down, the other interesting thing is he's got Henderson from that game, who one is questionable. So, like, that's kind of scary because he doesn't have any, like, I guess he can plug in Moss or, like, Jones. I don't know. Like, those guys just don't really get me going. But the thing is, even if he starts, he's against the best run defense in the entire league that held, like, Zeke to 2 points.
Yeah, and this,
So, like,
this is a game-time decision where your only other option plays a later game, or an earlier game, rather. So Henderson plays at 3, and his other guy, Zach Moss, is nooner. So he's going to have to sort of make a snap judgment early, and he's in a really fucked position if Henderson doesn't play.
I mean, he can start Jones, but, like, that hasn't been, like...
Can he, though? He's been awful. You were right about Fournette. Fournette's clearly the guy that's damn near an air raid offense. Like,
But like, yeah, I mean, he's been really good. He has some great advanced stats. I mean, not that translates to points, but I feel like they could just decide to go with Jones like they did last year, and he could be okay. I mean, I wouldn't start him. I mean, I had him on my team, and I decided to drop him because I'm like, yeah, there's better options out there. But like, I'm just saying, like, yeah. I mean, it's not the most pleasant, but anyway, even if he starts, he's against a tough front. Gordon, who's in a timeshare, but he's been getting a little more work, I think, than the rookie, and been a little better with it. And you know, he's been consistent, and nothing crazy, but he's been getting the job done. And a really juicy matchup against the Jets, Jets, who I think are one of the worst run fronts. So that should be a pretty good spot for him. I tend to think he outscores Henderson or whoever he plugs in there. Here we've got Kamara at New England. Kamara was awful last week. I think New England's defense has been pretty good. I don't love Kamara's chances. I don't really love him as a player. I didn't really want to draft him, but like you sort of had to, or I was drafting out of. And Harris against like sort of slightly below average run front. He's been getting a ton of work, hasn't been efficient with it, but like I expect he probably gets 10. Maybe slight edge him over Kamara. I think Kamara sucks.
You had to take him though at the 4 spot.
You had to. I mean, he could bounce back. Who knows? But I guess we'll give Harris the slight edge. Here we've got DJ Moore locked in for 12. I was sort of hoping he'd get a tutty and get me 20 and have a nice little edge against Sterling Shepard, who's been the Giants' #1 option.
But Darnold ran it in twice, getting grimy. So unfortunately for you, that didn't happen. And C-Mac got hurt too.
Yeah, I know.
C-Mac went down early, so you're probably sitting to yourself thinking, shit, Moore already has like 8. This could be great.
Yeah. You better believe it. I was like, surely he can pencil in for 1, but no, he didn't quite get there. He dropped one that like would have been a tutty, but you know, it is what it is. So Shepard's the #1 guy against a soft Atlanta defense. Like, I mean, I think it's about a wash. I think Shepard probably will get like 12 to 15. You know.
Yeah.
Here we've got Ridley against the Giants, against Kupp, and like a dynamite matchup. Kupp's been absolute phenom this year, and I expect that to continue into the matchup against Tampa Bay. I think he outscores Ridley probably.
Agreed. Cooper Kupp and Tyler Lockett, I think, have been the 2 most explosive receivers this season so far.
Yeah. And then here you've got an interesting matchup. You got a Kelsey on Waller matchup.
Probably 1 and 2.
Yeah, I think slight edge Kelsey here.
Really, even with Miami?
Yeah, Miami plays a slow pace and like has them giving up a lot of points versus like I guess the Chargers play ugly and they like tend to, it feels like they don't play like high scoring games.
They're undisciplined too. Lots of like shitty dumb penalties and unforced errors.
I just think that like with the Ravens winning with the lockdown hill strategy, I have to think the coaching staff goes to that as the Chargers coaching staff. I should go see like what they did historically against them. But slight edge Kelsey, but I mean, who knows? Like Waller could get 20 targets and like get there, I guess. But still, realistically, you got edge Kelsey. Here, you got Julio Jones, who showed some rapport last week finally. With Edmonds against Jacksonville.
That's true. Julio looked a lot better than he did week 1.
I think Edmonds is probably good for. He's like sort of weird because he's like not a high volume guy, but he's been getting like over 10 touches every week and like he hasn't punched it in yet. So like he's doing sort of what I expected, you know.
Yeah.
Which is, you know, sort of getting you 8 and then when he punches in he gets you 14 and he's sort of like a flex by week guy. So I can't complain there. Good matchup against Jacksonville. I think that this could like game script really favors Edmonds here, where I think that Arizona probably plays this from ahead, and they probably want to run the ball a little more. So that's sort of good. I still got to edge Julio slightly. I don't think like most of these matchups. I don't think like Mark is like crazy ahead. It's just slight edges, you know.
Yeah, definitely.
At the bottom here, I love Gay.
Oh, yeah.
Love it.
Yeah, there's nothing more beautiful.
Nothing.
Than Matt Gay kicking a ball as hard as he can between those gaping uprights.
Yeah. So got to go with Gay. And then the Bucks at LA. Yeah, I think they'll probably get a couple sacks, but like
you're not feeling great about that Sean McVay offense matchup.
Yeah, I mean, they still turn the ball over sometimes, but yeah, I'd probably expect it. If they get 5, I'm pretty happy. You know, it's just one of those things when you draft the Bucks, you kind of have to roll with them.
Yeah.
You can't be like streaming. You can't afford those roster spots. But I've got to favor the Steelers over the Buccaneers at LA. You know, in SoFi Stadium.
SoFi Stadium. Was that like an arena football league or something?
No, that's LA's stadium.
Oh, what happened to the Coliseum? I'm just joking. Keep going.
So yeah, I mean, realistically, I hadn't really honestly dove in that deep, but I think I have to edge Mark slightly here. But it's anyone's game.
Great analysis. I think that Najee Harris is going to have less than 8, and I'm real worried about Henderson. I think you can pencil him in for less than 7. And I think
if Henderson doesn't play, I edge myself. But thinking Henderson plays, like, I think I'm going to have a tough time. I can't favor myself if Henderson's playing, honestly.
Okay. I'll edge you by a point.
Yeah, that's real important though, because if I win that one, I'm sort of running away with the division, and I have the edge in tiebreakers, you know. So, got to get it done.
Yeah, a lot of that will come down to Henderson, especially because of his depth. I think that really like amps up the impact of that. As you can see, you're already 2-0. You're one of 3 2-0 teams, and if you get that one, it's so lucky for you that are so lucky for Christian that he eked that win out. Because if Seagouch had lost, you'd be in this beautiful position where it's like Cam and then Mark who would be 1-1, you know. But anyway, Seagouch didn't lose; he won, so he's right on your heels.
The thing that I've noticed about Mark is he's not real good with like managing in depth. where I notice his starting lineups typically are good and he drafts well, but like, well might be an overstatement. He drafts fine, but then like I always look at his benches and he always seems so slim at running back every year.
Yeah.
Like it seems like he only has one or two guys every year at running back, and then his backup options are always weak. I don't know, just sort of a random, complete, non-scientific observation that I noticed about Mark.
I like your observations, and I like observations about Mark. This is a guy we've been playing with for over a decade that I've literally never met, despite like going over to Cameron's house like before and after high school. Never met the guy, and I just like it when people sort of speculate about him because it adds a little bit of like panache to this mystery character. So
we got a real barn burner here.
Seagouch and Cameron. Of course, Dalvin Cook I think is going to be the big story. Did not participate for Friday's practice, and
I mean the big story is will he wake up in time to like swap out the guy who's been out for literally 2 days?
Who would you put in if you were him, Pittman or Waddle?
Pittman.
Yeah, Cam could just like straight auto lose this shit if he doesn't wake you up.
Yeah, I mean,
by the way, we waited until Saturday night to do this episode. I know a lot of people sort of like check their sub box early, or they want me to do the fucking games before the Thursday night game. This is why I don't do that, is we'd be sitting here like, I wonder who he's going to start, and like shadow boxing the benches and stupid shit. You know, obviously Cameron is probably not going to mess with it until tomorrow morning. And
if he messes with it.
Right. So like it's going to be really difficult for him to roll out of bed at 11:40 and hit the Snickers optimize button. So that'll be the thing to watch for, is if Cameron can hit the optimizer.
Yeah, I think all three of the Watsons use the optimize button, by the way.
I think we don't have to spend much time on this and we can just call this for the Gouch.
Yeah, like it's not even worth going into player matchups because even if he plugs in his backups, it's. I mean,
not even
having Robbie Anderson do 0.8 is like hilarious.
Yeah,
like
especially against Houston. Matt Rules says they need to find ways to get Anderson the ball. Try throwing at his head without a helmet and let his hair catch it.
He'll probably be better down the stretch now if McCaffrey's out a couple weeks, but yeah.
True. All right, so the Gouch gets that one pretty easily. If Cam starts that guy that's been out for what will be like 4 days at that point, he's got to be hard flamed beyond recognition.
I just realized that Billy is on Weston's team still.
Good. Like, what even happens when I click this? Look at that! Oh, nice fucking docs. Okay, so... God damn it. I don't know why I did that. It was like Billy. It's like I expected to see a fucking photo of Billy Martin or some shit. Like, why would that even be a link? Okay, so Lily's facing off against Weston. Allen's going to do reasonably well against Washington. Buffalo looked phenomenal last week, but Wilson continues to put up big numbers and really air it out deep quite a bit. What do you think about this?
So yeah. I think Josh Allen has sort of underperformed this year. We really haven't seen him have a great game yet. He hasn't gotten that rushing work. He sort of hasn't needed to do a ton to keep them in games. Like last week, he got shut down early because they had a huge lead against Miami. I think that must be why the running backs did so well for Buffalo last week.
Yep.
I think that their game against Washington should be more competitive than the one against Miami where the starter got hurt midway. So yeah, I think he has a better game. Russell Wilson's been in some barn burners so far this year, some real high scoring games. Let's see what's the total on that? Got a 54.5 total, so pretty high totals. Vegas is saying that'll be a lot of scoring. I think he got to edge. Probably got to edge Wilson here.
Agreed.
The total the total on that Washington game is only 45, so there's going to be 10 more points of scoring in that Wilson game. So, and Carson really hasn't gotten a ton of scoring done through the ground. Like, he scored 2 touchdowns, but like he only had 29 yards last week. Like, if they're getting the job done, it's through the air normally. So.
Yeah, Wilson's shown an incredible rapport with Tyler Lockett and has shown a willingness to really take big gambles way downfield. It's worked out well for him. Pete Carroll loves those big gambles.
Oh, yeah.
What do you think about this Browns backfield against Chirac? Chirac's defense, not what it was a few years ago. Maybe that could even be considered a flash in the pan at this point. Lily's in this nice situation where, like, she's not really going to miss the touchdowns unless they go to OBJ if the Browns score, you know.
Yeah, it's funny. It's interesting. I think I still got to edge the dual Browns backs. I mean, I don't love that she's starting them both. Like, I would probably keep Chubb as a handcuff or whatever. And, like, I don't know. I guess her bench sort of stinks. I guess Hunt's her best option. But, yeah, it's sort of odd to start both. But at least she knows she's not going to get, like, randomly gypped, you know?
Yeah.
So there's probably – I got to edge her. I don't, like – we saw Dallas turn into a timeshare last week, and I don't see why that wouldn't continue into this week. Yeah, I mean, I don't love Elliott. Williams is in a timeshare. It's pretty close to 50-50, but I think Melvin Gordon is a slight edge in the work, and he's getting more of the goal line work. Yeah, I think I got to edge the Browns backs, or sorry, the Cleveland Browns backs. Yeah.
Agreed. I think Zeke is a couple more Tony Pollard pop-off games away from becoming a guy who in a full fucking timeshare. Whereas before, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, Zeke was definitively one of these few guys who was RB1 and didn't have to split time and was a ground and pound guy who would actively seek out that point of first contact. And now when you watch Zeke Elliott, he's falling down before anyone touches him a lot of the times. And when they put Pollard in, Pollard looks hungry and explosive. So I would really be worried if I was an owner of Zeke Elliott this season. He was someone who I was explicitly trying to stay away from and could have drafted in the mid-first, but I didn't.
Yeah, Weston got good value on him. It's like I don't hate the pick where he did it. It was sort of the spot where I hoped I wouldn't be.
Other than fourth.
Yeah, like the two guys. Like ironically, I sort of liked the Kamara spot better when it was clear that they weren't going with the Taysom Hill show. But like, yeah, you're sort of having to buy into the Jameis ebbs and flows with Kamara, which I don't love either. But at least Kamara can't hawk goal line touches. But yeah, that was the other spot, with sort of the 8 or 9 spot with if Elliott falls, which I didn't think would happen in our league, but you know, anything's possible, I guess. But yeah, right now I've got it as, you know, slight edge Weston from quarterback, slight edge Lily from running back.
Hopkins dinged up a little bit.
Game time decision. So yeah, that should be tough because that's a big manager thing too. Like that's something you got to.
She doesn't even have a receiver on her bench. She would have to do Beasley, and then a running back.
Probably Hines. I mean, like, I don't like any of them. Like, she shouldn't even roster half of her bench, to be honest. But yeah,
Diggs and Thielen are just gonna kill her receivers.
Yeah, Aguilar's been decent this year actually, but yeah, not as good. What did he do last week?
He got 3 targets and put up a stinker game.
Oh, I just remember him being okay from one, but yeah, I guess he was horrible last week. But yeah, I mean, it's not close. I think she edges tight end though. I mean, Hooper could literally get 0, and like it's probably a 50-50 chance of him getting 0.
Definitely.
And maybe not that he's getting some targets, but definitely 50-50 of him breaking like 4. So yeah, and then Debo, I've got to edge out over Beasley. And then the bottom I've got to give to Wes, I guess. So yeah, I think Weston has a pretty healthy edge here. He should win by. I'm surprised Lily's projected to win. That's sort of shocking to me, but think I got to edge West by at least 5, maybe 10.
I give Lily the advantage on special teams and kicker, but I think Weston will win the game.
Okay, I thought you meant on the game, and I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, even if Hopkins does play, like,
I think Goodnow will have 15 plus, and the Ravens could have 7 plus. So
yeah,
Weston wins, I think.
Detroit's been putting up a lot of points. I guess they've been giving up sacks too. That's sort of I guess why I'm not as high. But
All right, Jaxon really needs a win. McCaffrey already stuck him with 4 and got hurt. That's the worst whenever your star carry player plays for like a quarter and gets hurt for the rest of the game, and someone you were relying on to carry you is now awful. So what are your thoughts on Jackson's team overall? Should he really be panicking? Obviously, he's a good owner and he's going to persistently pick people up and keep fighting, but its team looks like it's kind of falling apart at the seams a bit here. Like, what do you think on this?
yeah, it's tough. Yeah, I mean, when you get that first slot, like, you sort of pitch your tent around McCaffrey being a stud.
I always pitch my tent to McCaffrey.
Which he had been up until getting hurt against Houston. But yeah, I mean, that's a devastating blow. If he's out 3 weeks, I mean, it's not like he was 2-0 going in. It's tough.
A couple of
And
3
then-
weeks. Shit, that's so terrible for McCaffrey owners. Brutal.
Yeah, I'm sort of sitting here looking at this matchup, and I think you got to edge Clap for. Like,
Yeah. Jaxon doesn't have that many outs.
yeah.
Cooper
I
Kupp's
mean-
dominating Robert Woods' fucking timeshare.
Even if you locked in McCaffrey for 20, like, this is still a flip.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think that's a crazy thing to say. I mean, like, yeah, he's sort of metting on that. I guess his out would be Woods and Metcalf both having ceiling games, like the 3 touchdown Metcalf game, which is like well within the realm of possibilities. I really like the Cordell Patterson pickup. That was sort of an interesting pickup because he's getting a lot of touches, sort of like with Mike Davis. He's sort of in like a wide receiver, like running back timeshare where they're like rotating him in both positions. I don't know.
Lots of snaps is nice always.
Yeah, not a bad flex option, but yeah, like again, it's hard to coax 5 points out of your tight end if you're just like picking off the scrap heap despite other people's opinions on that. So yeah, that's gonna be tough. And Pitts is coming into his own, and like Clotford's finally not sitting him like an idiot. So
Brilliant.
that's good. Yeah, and like this is what I was saying about Clotford's team. It doesn't blow your doors off, but you sort of look and you're like, he doesn't really have a weak position. Like, I guess you could say Pollard is a timeshare back, but like,
But he's trending up hard.
yeah. And then he could also throw Drake in there. That's not a bad option.
True.
I sort of like the Devontae Smith guy for Philly. Like,
Yes.
he showed some upside. I mean, none of these names are blowing crazy, but like, so there's a couple teams in our league who can't fill out every position with an above average to average person.
Well, and if
you'll win some games doing that.
If we think about matchups here, Jaxon, it looks like he's running into trouble and he's getting cold at the wrong time and has some question marks. So yeah, Clatfor's team isn't god tier, but in this specific matchup, you're feeling pretty good about it.
So if you're Jaxon theoretically and you lose this week, like what do you do? Like how do you recover from that? Like obviously you keep trying to pick up guys. Like do you try to do like or try to hurt McCaffrey to like another team for like guys who are healthy now to try to squeeze wins out? You just try to hold it together with duct tape and like hope for the best, and McCaffrey comes back and carries you. Like, what's the build?
I think that trading McCaffrey is not the answer because no one's going to value him. Like,
Yeah.
Because obviously a week ago he's like the old Timo weapon. Like you're pretty much swapping a first. Should be able to trade like McCaffrey for anyone in the league. And now, how are people going to value him? It depends on how much they're worried about the injury. I suppose. So I don't think trading McCaffrey is the build. I think like if you're gonna do that, you wait.
So
till
what
the
if
bye week.
what if a team like what if like for instance like Weston? What if Weston gave him like I don't know like Diggs and Elliott for McCaffrey?
McCaffrey?
Yeah.
Uh, I mean that would be okay. I think the build might be to try to offload Metcalf. He's like a hyped guy. You might be able to get.
No, that's definitely not the build.
Why?
I like I think Metcalf is like a buy low candidate.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't think
And
there's
like
a lot of good options here.
I mean like I agree. I was just throwing out like the potential of like someone who's super deep like Weston, who has it's like who I sort of look at his team and I'm like, well, he could move Debo Sanders into the wide receiver 2 slot and then flex someone, and McCaffrey is like a big improvement over Elliott. So like it sort of makes sense. And then you're sort of buying like obviously we've been talking about Elliott, so we don't buy into Elliott, but like I mean, he is still like a guy who you sort of have to like flip some coins, you know, when you're behind. And I was just throwing that out as a potential option. I don't know. I was trying to do something similar when I had a weak start with Aaron, but he refused to do it until it was too late, basically. So.
All right, we can go into the final game here, and this is me playing Rampy. Stafford and Herbert. Sort of funny that Aaron's back to starting Herbert. I hope he has an absolute fucking blow-up embarrassment week. After we were like laughing at Aaron for idiotically starting Winston, then he was like mocking us. Oh, it won't even matter. It won't even. And then he just completely sucked out and got an undeserved win by less than 7 points. And like parentheses, it really did matter. You just got lucky. So hopefully Herbert really shits the bed. What jumps out at you about this matchup? Because I'm looking at this and I'm feeling pretty good. I don't think it'll be a blowout, but I think I'm favored overall.
Yeah. I tend to agree here. Aaron sort of has a huge weakness at tight end. Like Higbee's just not going to get the job done for him, I think, on a week-to-week basis. He's sort of running back to his little week with Gaskin.
Yep.
Yeah, obviously I really like Stafford. I think he's in a really good spot in a high total game against Tampa Bay, like the highest total game of the week, I believe. Yeah, it is the highest total game of the week.
Barkley with the soft matchup. They might even play from ahead for fuck's sake, for like the first time and last time all season.
Yeah, I think he's still on the snap count a little bit, but yeah, he's gonna get a little more work than he did the week before. Yeah, I think I gotta favor you. I'm sort of looking at positions and
Dallas's soft defense with Sanders and the Philly tight end.
I think I literally like this is a this is
Favor
a
me
weird
across
take.
the board.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like I think obviously Aaron Jones I favor over Barkley, but then like if I think about Sanders against Gaskin, like the amount I might favor him at I guess running back. That's like the only position group I think he has that advantage in. Herbert's in a good spot against Kansas City with the high total. So that I mean Herbert definitely has 30-point upside and could outscore Stafford if that game gets real ugly, but
I think his out here is his receivers. If Jefferson and CeeDee Lamb have pop-off games, I think that's how he wins.
I agree, but Jefferson has not been. There's been sort of a third receiver that's
The guy with the dreads.
Yeah, I forget his name, but there's been another guy for the Vikings who's been really involved, and then Adam Thielen has been more involved as well. So, I mean, I still think Jefferson will have good weeks, but that sort of he's trending down in my book because just the opportunity will be a little less than I was expecting.
Agreed.
And then CeeDee Lamb, like, I mean, he's been good, inconsistent, but I don't know. I mean, I guess anything's possible. I guess he could go for 30.
I like both of Aaron's receivers for 8+, but if you look at my receivers, it's the strength of my team. Especially
this Pascal guy that he has been like real consistent too for the Colts. It does look a little fluky though. Not a ton of targets to drive it.
He's coming off of an illness, presumably AIDS.
Yeah, I mean, I still favor you. I will say something that I've been monitoring a little bit is sort of some of like the Philly tight end work. I mean, it's sort of scary.
Yeah, I wish that Zach Ertz was still sick, so it would just be a complete Goddard fumble. Should I start OBJ in his first game back off of the injured list this season, Spencer? Are you familiar with the catch?
Yes. Every time I talk with you, you remind me of the catch.
Well, I mean, that's what we keep hearing about for years and years, so... OBJ is like a music artist that has a great song on their debut album, and like people just keep talking about that as they put out garbage albums like year after year. Like, remember that one banger he had back in 2011? It's like fucking OBJ's career.
I'm sort of surprised that Aaron is favored in the projections. I don't know where that's coming from.
My team doesn't project out for shit, I've noticed. It's funny, it's like the receivers especially, they underproject every week. Like Scary Terry, 7 points. That's like a common thing. By the way, the projections don't show because the Thursday night game already happened. I don't know why they don't show up in this format.
Yeah, I'm like over here trying to click everything to like pull it up because I'm like curious where it's coming from. But yeah, I mean, long story short, we've sort of been rambling around it, but I still got to favor you. Not by a ton, but by a decent amount. I just don't think that Jones... I think Jones is going to have good games and bad games, but I think that, probably coming back down to earth for this one for maybe closer to 10. Yeah, I don't think Gaskin will do a ton. And then Higbee, I think, last week he got 1 target. Like, if you're starting a tight end with 1 target, then that's rough.
I don't love Barkley and Sanders as my bell horse guys, but this is one of those weeks where you got to be smiling matchup-wise. Atlanta and Dallas, 2 fucking soft defenses, so I'm penciling in both Barkley and Sanders for 10+. Yeah, I'm sort of worried about Barkley's knee. That might limit him enough where he only gets like 8 or 9, but you've really got to eat these matchups.
I think this matchup will be interesting because I think what will happen is I think you'll be losing by about 5 going into the Monday game.
Well, where I will have Sanders and Goddard left.
Yeah, something like that. Like 5 to 10, I think you might be losing by. And then you're basically like, oh, is Goddard actually going to get points this week? Is Sanders actually going to...
Because Philly looked awful last week, so there is a chance that they could eat shit and die, and I could die along with them. That's another one of Aaron's win conditions.
Yeah, I think you're probably too invested in Philly, but it is what it is.
That's just my Riley Cooper love showing through.
Exactly.
They should bring Chip Kelly back and Riley Seaver back as receivers coach. So do you have any closing thoughts for this episode, Spencer?
No, nothing that I can think of. I think I guess Weston is going to run away with that top division. I just with the way Jackson's team is going, I think it's going to be real tough to. I mean, it's not like it'd be one thing if sort of like last year where the whole division Jackson was in was floundering. But I don't see Weston. He's so deep that he can sustain a couple injuries and like still win that division. Mine and yours is definitely still wide open. If I flounder this week and Mark's 1 game back, Seagouch could be tied if he should win against Cameron. So very much Shannon. I mean, obviously yours is completely tied. You should win against Aaron, but it is what it is.
It's going to be really depressing if the week after you predicted Cam to make the playoffs, he fucking starts that guy that is out. I mean, that's just going to be like ultimate clown show shit if this Jaxon guy gets started. I mean, it'll just be brutal.
It is pretty crazy because like his team looked so good last week or like week 1 or whatever. Like I was just like looking at it and like how can he manage this to the ground, and he somehow managed to do it.
Snickers satisfies, Spencer.
So over under on him. Like, what do you think? If you were to put percent chance, what are the odds of Deontay Johnson having an O by his name and being in the starting lineup?
25% because it's week 3. If it was week 8, it would be like 70%.
I think it's like 40.
Oh,
I'm gonna be so mad because he never does it against me. Somehow he always manages to wake up and check his lineup against me.
At least you beat him. I fucking lose to him.
Yeah. I'm just like sitting here thinking like Cameron has never like started a out player against me, and some of them have been last minute scratches that like I sort of figured he'd miss and he somehow gets. But then against other people, like the O will be staring at me all week, and then somehow he still won't change it. And it's always against people who like I need him to beat. Yeah, never against just like a non-factor matchup.
You know what's funny is this jokish thing that we can sort of deduce where in the same way that I know that AB traded for Kittle despite Ben, I know that Cameron always beats me because he's like, oh, I'm playing Wiley. This is my must-win game. Cameron beating me is his Super Bowl. Maybe that's why he's so lax, is he beats me in week 5 and he's like, fuck it, that's all that matters. I'm semi-AFK for the rest of the year.
Does he even know he's playing you?
Oh, yeah. Because he'll talk shit after he wins every time. He'll text me something.
That's amazing.
All right, we'll end on that note. Good job, Spence. Say easy.
Easy.
Easy!